the president was really very clear. When universities weren't putting teeth into their own policy and enforcing it, we took measures to bring it to their attention, and I believe what we're seeing now is that effectiveness.
Linda McMahon is leading the administration's fight against elite universities, including Harvard and Columbia.
They can't allow encampments on campuses. They can't allow students to come on dressed with masks.
She and President Trump have cut billions in government funding to these schools and demanded federal oversight on campuses. As the fight continues to escalate, WSJ sat down with the Secretary of Education to learn more about where she thinks it's going next.
All right.
Secretary McMahon, thanks for taking the time with us. Let's start with Harvard. Is the administration trying to make an example of Harvard?
Harvard is clearly one of the most prestigious universities in the world. And some of the things we were trying to do relative to preventing anti-Semitism on campuses, which is something the president campaigned on, we started really with Columbia, not Harvard. So what we are seeing, by virtue of the action that we were taking, are a lot of other universities who are looking at their policies and making sure that they have preventive measures in place so that there isn't this kind of harassment, so that students can come and get an education and not feel threatened and be afraid to be there.
Your issues with Harvard and Columbia go beyond anti-Semitism, right? Can you speak to some of those issues?
Well, sure. And as we started sitting down and talking with the presidents of these universities and looking at the overall plans that we had in place, we wanted to make sure, in terms of safety on campuses and what we're going on, okay, let's look a little bit broader. Let's take a look at what their hiring practices are for a lot of the professors that they're bringing in, especially from outside of the country. Let's look at the students that are coming on board, and are they properly vetting those students to make sure that there aren't activists or those who even might have had terrorist backgrounds.
But what legal authority do you have to stop activists from campus? Because some might hear activist and also hear free speech.
I used activists as an example, but as we're looking at doing a lot of vetting to make sure we're trying as best as possible to check their backgrounds, and are we doing a thorough enough job before those people do come on our campuses.
So there was a letter sent to Harvard by the Department of Education, I think it was May 5th, where it used some pretty combative language. It criticized Harvard for hiring Bill de Blasio, the former New York City mayor. Whether you like Bill de Blasio or not, why was he mentioned in the letter? Does Harvard not have a right to hire a mayor that you all don't like?
I think Harvard, yes, Harvard does have a right to do that, but I think it was pointing out a little bit, where is your judgment? Where is your judgment in who you're hiring, who you're bringing on campus? What is your value system, relative to that? And it was it's a bit of a tweak for sure.
In that letter, McMahon wrote that Harvard had made a mockery of higher education, and it should no longer seek government grants. Harvard's president, Alan Garber, defended those grants in an interview with the Journal last month.
We think it's an honor to be able to perform work for the federal government addressing national priorities. The nation is facing daunting challenges: security challenges, economic challenges, health challenges. We can help.
Just on the research and development front, universities, elite universities like the ones you've described, have often been at the forefront of providing the research that drives the American economy. Do you worry that the research capacity of these universities will be compromised and then it will have an impact on our economy?
I do think there's so much good research that is done at universities. And NIH made, their determination of what funding that they were going to withhold from Harvard. That wasn't us, but we do want to see the research continue. I do think Harvard, though didn't say it directly to me, I did hear that they might use some of their endowment so that there wasn't any gap in this timing, with the research. I think the research is important. I hope it will be able to continue.
Do you see any potential compromise with Harvard, or will this ultimately just be settled by the courts?
Oh, I certainly hope there's a compromise.
You all have set out demands that they've said no to, and so what are the outlines of a potential compromise?
Well, isn't that the way a compromise always works?
Right, so
each side sets out its demands, so we'll keep you informed as they get closer.
Any hints about where you might move or where Harvard might move to try to meet in the middle?
Well, we've actually started. I think the original demands about anti-Semitism, they've already replaced the head of their Middle East studies. And so they're doing some things. We'll get to the right answer if there's a compromise to be made. Part of their lawsuit was really starting that this was infringement on First Amendment rights. We're very clear, this is not a First Amendment right. I firmly believe that on campuses there should be the right to peaceful protest and open debate and discussion of ideas. I think that's what university is about, but not when it becomes violent. And that is a Title VI violation, and that's against the law.
The Education Department last week cited a violation of the same law when it took aim at Colombia's accreditation.
They've taken a number of steps to meet some of the demands of the administration. Why are they still being targeted? And is it fair to say that their accreditation is at risk?
We are sitting down with Colombia, and they really do want to make sure that they have the right policies in place. And I think we've made really good strides. The letter to the accreditor was simply to say, okay, we are pointing out all of the things that universities must be aware of, and if they are in violation of federal law, then that needs to be on our part. If the accreditor is not aware, we need to make sure the accreditor is aware so that they're following and doing their job as well.
So what specifically do you want to see Colombia do to meet some of these issues?
I think we're moving in the right direction. You know, we want to have a whole approach with them, and I think we're pretty close to that.